start recording. And what I'll do is I'll just pull these down and quickly go through it and give you some feedback. I wonder if I can do it just by playing them in here. So most of them I probably can. Well, let's try it and see. See how well it plays in here. Yeah, not bad. All right, cool. So I think that may be doable to do it that way. So we'll go ahead and start with Cade here. Is there a... That's in step mode. Actually, this is looking pretty good. So the first notes I have on it are sort of the weight of how the hips go up and down and like sort of settle into each of those steps. I'm feeling the side to side shifts, but like right there on that step forward. Let's see, right. Come on, really? I can't scrub it that way. Can I step forward this way? No. All right, that answers that question. Let's just download everything. Give me a second here. I know y'all are probably still uploading stuff. If somebody gets something uploaded a little late, let me know and I can re-download it. Desktop. Show in folder. Oh, that was fast. 7-zip. So let's try that again. Yeah, I'm going to watch it in the stepped mode if that's all right. So yeah. Where are you at? No. Yeah, I think it's like that step right there. Like you make this contact right there. And then like I feel like somewhere right through here, you should see just a little bit of a dip in the hips as the character steps across, right? Yeah, it's really just taking whatever that control is right there and just more up and down on it, I think. Because you'll also see it a little bit later here in this second step right here. And that up and down motion is where you're really going to start to feel the weight of the character. Why is it not updating? In those steps, right? So I don't know if this is intentional or not, or something you're going for or not here. She's kind of looking up and off to one side.
I don't know where that's happening.
Okay.
Basically, if you look at the other video, it will show you that her eyes are...
Then what that actually probably is an issue with the being in stepped mode. Yeah, so I think that this is one of those things when I say, we're using a character with a face and our eyes are drawn to faces, so we will recognize that stuff even if you don't want us to. And so like when her eyes were up and looking out in the corner, it felt very flippant. Like she was like kind of like dismissing someone and walking around them. Now, like we can see her eyes, it feels almost like she's like dancing around them, like sashaying around them. But I think I would really play with her eyes and what her head's doing to show that. Like, if you think about it, like if you take a step around something, it's going to read completely different if you're kind of looking off to the side and ignoring the world than it would if you were looking where you step. Right? If you're looking where you're stepping, you're being very cautious about how you move or very thoughtful about how you move. If you're looking off into the distance, you're more thoughtful about how you're being perceived, right? Or something like that. And so I think that little things like that in the face and the eyes are going to kind of come across. The other thing is I think you could probably work a little bit more on the hand poses.
Yeah.
Like they're feeling a little...
That is what I was going to work on last, just to...
Yeah. Strangely, they're easier if you work on them as you go. just because you get some stuff for free that way, versus if you work on them at the end, you have to do everything in that pass, right? So yeah, but I mean, I think I would also, if you have the time, she kind of hits that last pose, like after she stepped around and then just stops. I think I would extend it by maybe like 10, 20 frames, something like that, and let her kind of settle into that stop, like, you know, like ease into it and come to a rest.
Slow it down a bit.
Yeah, or like maybe she overshoots it, maybe she eases into it, but right now she just kind of hits it and the video ends, right? And so.
Yeah, there's still more to this. I'm still working on it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, this is looking cool. All right, how can I make my video? There we go. So let's move on here. I know Carissa, she messaged me and said she wasn't going to be able to make it today, but she uploaded some stuff to look at. And so she may see it in this, she may be able to watch the video of this. So Carissa's doing a game set. Oh, what happened? There we go. Yeah, she's doing a set of game animations. Why does it keep doing that? I keep switching to the draw over thing and it minimizes it. Maybe it's because it's full screen. And so a couple of little things I'm kind of noticing in this. This is the idle pose where the character is kind of eager to get going. I think the thing I would look at on this, Carissa, is like your feet and hands are kind of like all of this kind of feels very flat on to the screen. And so like if we were looking at this from like top down, like looking down at the character's head, like the shoulders, the hips, the hands, and the feet all kind of line up together, right? And I think the more you can kind of get some angles going on there, the better. Like let's say if this were the feet and this were the shoulders, and then maybe, you know, the hips and hands kind of go right to the middle, then you get a little bit more of this like twisting all the way down the character. And it's just, angles are usually more interesting than straight lines, right? And these are these implied straight lines that we're seeing all throughout the shot, you know. And anything you can do to kind of break that up to give us some angles will make it a little more interesting to look at. Its reading is like a bounce, like one bounce feels bigger than the other, and I'm noticing that she's getting a lot of squash and stretch in her torso, right? The distance between her belt line and her clavicle is stretching quite a bit, and so it's reading as if she's intentionally like sort of like bopping her hips downward, right? It's almost like a dance. I think that biggest stretch you have in there, I would sort of reduce that by a little bit, like scale that curve down just a little bit. I think a lot of what's going to make this read clearly is the overlapping action of like, is this a breathe cycle or is it sort of like a bouncing, like eager to go? And if it's the eager to go, you're building some overlapping action into the poses. But I think like once you put this in spline and start smoothing some of that, I think it will really help. So the other thing she has is a run test. Repeat. I'll move this. And it's not reading as a run to me. It's reading more as a fast walk, but I think that's fine. If this is the speed and the energy you need to, or you're wanting the character to go in, it doesn't have to run. We'll go over this a little bit more in the rest of the class. The difference between a walk and a run, like a speed walk and a run, isn't just the like speed of stuff. It's that a run, the character completely comes off the ground. Like there's one frame where the character is like completely up in the air, you know, like something like this, right? You got the arms back here, whatever. And in a walk, that never happens. In a walk, at least one limb or one leg is always, or one foot is always touching the ground. Even a speed walk, it's always touching the ground. And the reason for that is because this is kind of like a hop right? It's like your character hopping up and down over and over again in a run. And that impact is hard, right? A speed walk is really like trying to reduce that impact. And it's the point where you go from speed walk to jog that you actually start leaving the ground, and then run is like these leaping bounds you're making. So this is reading like speed walk, which is perfectly fine if that's what you're going for. Feels like it's got a little bit of a... so with any cycle, something that will make a cycle feel like a limp or something like that is if it's kind of asymmetrical. And I can't see exactly what's asymmetrical, but one of the motions, and it feels like it's maybe the lean from side to side, is bigger than the other. And so what you'll see in your graph editor later is like, let's say this is 0, and in your curves, you'll either see something that looks like, like these two humps, right? And if one of these humps is way bigger than the other, right, like you get like that and then like that, right? Then that's where you're getting that asymmetry, right? It may also not be two humps. It may be like an S shape. You get this down the center, and you may have something like this, right? And really what that means you need to do is take that point and move it down to something like this, or vice versa. Take this point, move it up to something like this to get a little bit more symmetry. And it doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but when one side is doing something different than the other side is doing, we have especially in a walk cycle or a run cycle, we have a tendency to read that as a limp. And I'm kind of seeing something in here that's just feeling a little asymmetrical. And it may be how much her hips are going up and down, or it may be like how big she's swinging one arm compared to the other. So I would do a quick comb through to make sure that's working. The other thing is make sure her upper chest, that you're getting some rotation in that. Like this mass right up here. Make sure you're getting like some twist in that or some lean to that, just to keep the spine from getting too stiff. So, all right, I know she wasn't here, but I felt like that was probably still helpful just to see anyway. Alicia, let's see. Oh, nice. Repeat. Yeah, this is looking pretty cool. I like seeing you tracking the arcs on the feet there. That's cool. I think the two things I'm kind of seeing that I would work on, and this may just be a splining thing you haven't gotten to yet. The way she leaves the starting pose, like if you look at your reference, like you were already in a full out run. Alicia, are you in the room? I think you are. Yeah, there you are. Yeah. So you can see, like in your reference, I don't know if like you're already in a full out run at the beginning of this, and so you don't ease into it. Like your spacing is really big from the very beginning, but in Maya you have that first keyframe set, right? And what's going to happen is like you have a keyframe set, and then you set your second keyframe. And what Maya's going to do is ease out of that first keyframe to go into this, right? And what I would do is go in there and either set a keyframe before it, where you move her back a step, and that way you can cut into the action. The same way like you were really running before this, basically you would set a keyframe before your timeline starts, like back here, that way it just rolls straight into it, right? And it feels like it's continuing to, like if you're cutting on the shot right there, she's already moving forward, or I guess it's right there. She's already moving forward there, not starting to move forward, right? The other option is just to go in there and on that first keyframe, just set this tangent to linear. And what it'll do then is it'll just point it at that second keyframe, and it'll just feel like she's already moving. So that's one thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then the other thing I'm seeing is, to me, her spine feels a little stiff on the landing. Sure, her spine feels a little stiff in all of it. And I guess when I say spine, it's really more like this, like there's probably a control that controls her rib cage, or like that mass that would be her rib cage. And like really, if we think about any character, we got three main masses. We have this pelvis, we have the rib cage, we have the head. And I think you're doing a good job of moving the head around. I would do a little bit more work on sort of, maybe like here you would bend her forward just a little bit in the spine, and you could do that by like rotating the rib cage, down this way. And what you would get then is instead of sort of this straight line down her back, you would get a little bit more of a curve forward, and then her head would be like here, her spine would be more like this, and you get like this, a little bit more of a roll forward there. Maybe as she's coming in for a landing, then you would get the opposite, where you would roll that spine like what you kind of have here. You kind of roll it back, which is actually looking pretty good. And then when she lands here, that would give you a chance to do that opposite again, right? And so if when she was stretching for that land, if she was kind of arcing back on her spine here, she could kind of curl forward on it a little bit more. And so it's really just pushing the rotation. It may be translation, depending on how this rig works, on that mass to make sure it feels like you're getting sort of that curve in the spine. It's an interesting, is this the final camera angle?
It might be. If you have any suggestions.
I like the camera angle you're shooting it from, really, like the reference from, because I love this pose. Like, I love some of the really interesting, because you're getting like the character running alongside this horizontal axis, horizontal, and then you'd make this change direction and come toward us. So I would go for something, maybe not exactly like this, but kind of like that. But I'd make that choice pretty soon, because I think it'll really help with like cleaning up your poses, right? Like in this shot here, right? The silhouette is really cool on her feet, right? Like you get this cool foot poking out the back here. You get this going this way. But on her arms, her arm is covering her face, right? And so it would allow you to make that change to where her arm instead is doing something like this, right? And not in front of her face. And so like I would establish that pretty soon if you could, and then I think that'll help you like make those really small polish tweaks to it. But yeah, I like something like this. Maybe like right now we got a pretty good angle on how she's landing, but not as good on how she jumps off the tree. But I mean, I would like really, cameras are cheap in Maya. Like just throw a new camera in there, position it around, watch the animation from that camera, and then create another camera, put it somewhere else, watch it from there, and just sort of watch it from a couple of different places and see which one feels best to you in terms of like, was it fun to watch? Was it more interesting or engaging to watch? This may be also one of those things to, you could run by like your mentors or anybody else you want to get feedback from, like have a couple of different cameras and get some ideas from them. So,
Okay.
yeah, cool. This is looking good.
And Greg?
Yep.
Just to add a little bit more value to the Editable motion trail, if you click on it, you can have show frame crosses, and you can help visualize spacing.
Yeah,
Okay.
good call. I'll show you all that here in a second here. That is really handy to have. The other thing I think is, I see what you're doing right now, but this video still feels like it's playing in slow motion. So I would speed up the, like after you kind of get what you need out of the reference, speed up the animation. That way it feels like it's playing more at like real time.
Would I just select all the keyframes I've made?
Yeah, and just scale them. Yeah. Oh, come on, Maya. Sorry.
Hey, also, I don't think mine was downloaded. I think I put mine in right after you downloaded.
Okay.
So you might need to get mine.
I'll pull it down. Cool, that's looking good. Let me go ahead and do that really quick while while we are opening Maya. Did I miss anybody else's? Oh, wow. I missed a lot of others. Let's just do it again for everybody. Did Maya ever, let's see. Yay, Maya finished opening. There we go. So what Eli was talking about there, set a few keyframes here. If I do that editable motion trail on this, so I go to animation, visualize, create editable motion trail, it shows you these key points, like where your keyframes are. But if you select the curve itself, you can make changes to how this is visual, how this visualizes this. I don't know what some of this stuff is. Oh, it's the color. But you could do, let's think it's show frame crosses. And what you can see then is every keyframe, or every frame of your animation is this little key tick. You can even scale that up if you need to see it a little bit bigger. Change the color. You can put frame numbers on there. So you can do that instead of the crosses if that helps. So yeah, there's a lot of little things you can do to this to make this a more beneficial tool as well. So that's nice for like you needed to hit this like top pose and kind of ease in up there. And so you'll see that if I go to my Windows Animation Editor, Graph Editor, that if I adjust my tangents to where that happens, where I'm sort of breaking those and doing things to those. Maybe set all this to linear. Right. You get a little bit more of these frame ticks that are closer together up here, further apart down here, and that's how we're kind of adjusting our spacing is that way. So yeah, it's a very handy set of tools. Let's try this again. New folder. Extract to there. And I'll close my old one, keep my new one up. So yeah, good job, Alicia. Who's this? Is this Savannah Presley? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's check yours out. Yeah, this is looking cool. I think you're maybe missing a pose that would be neat to see, which is you get this contact right there where your foot contacts the ground, and then the next pose is that squash into it. Like you kind of hit the lowest point there and then sort of go back up. And it feels like there's a couple of keyframes right through there that you could add to sort of refine that motion a little better. But yeah, this is cool. And I think the other thing I'm seeing is sort of the arc on this jump right here. Like that feels right, and then it kind of pops up and over right there. And so that's just something you'd end up refining. But I think what's happening is I think your character is maybe jumping a little further forward. Like right here, you kind of shift it over to where it's almost over top of the reference. And so when you look at that arc on that, your character's arc feels like, what's happening? Feels like on the hips, it doesn't feel like an arc like this as much. It's feeling like it's shooting out to here and then going down. Does that make sense? So I sort of, yeah, just got to play around with that a little bit. But yeah, this is cool. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What were you saying about that?
No, I was seeing it, but I wasn't able to fix it last night. But yeah, so thank you.
Yeah. this is cool because I think you're you're not always going to be able to use your reference as directly as this, just because some reference is hard to get. I think one of the this is actually a really cool study though, like that you're able to so closely study the reference, and you're gonna get little things in there that you like, this little overcorrect that happens right there, and then settles back. Like that's really cool. I would think just a little bit about the way you're displaying it. It's kind of hard to see what you're jumping onto here, and also sort of what the risk is, right? Like maybe play with the camera just a little bit to see, like, is he jumping over these big chasms? Is he jumping around, is he playing kind of hopscotch? Like what is the, it's like from the angle we're at, the things that he's jumping on are almost off frame. So you may play with the camera just a little bit more to show that. But yeah, this is looking good. Good work.
All right, thank you.
Anytime. Okay, Elijah, you got sound? I'm assuming?
Yeah.
All right, let me set the sound. I'll go ahead and optimize for screen sharing too. Although I want to still have the video panel. All right, let's check it out. Oh, of course I have it set to mute. Let's see how that works. Hopefully this doesn't blow your ears out. Let's see.
The anger of a good man is not a problem. Good men have too many rules.
Good men don't need rules. Today is not the day to find out why I have so many.
The anger of a good man is not a problem. Good men have too many rules.
Good men don't need rules. Today is not the day to find out why I have so many.
The anger of a good man is not a problem. Good men have too many rules.
Good men don't need rules.
So so I'm getting a little confused about that last little lean in. Is she leaning in and kissing him right there?
No, that is a issue with the blocking. I edited something and I didn't go back into the gravity to make it be stepped. So
Okay.
it's
Gotcha.
she's meant to be falling.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But
So that's where
it's
he
not-
disappears and then reappears in this shot.
So switch out the rig, so I have to go back and reposition the hand a lot because of chest
Today
differences.
is not the day to find
Yeah.
out why I have so many.
And the
The anger of a
stepped
good
thing
man
happened
is
there
not a
because I
problem.
didn't finish posing her face yet.
Good men
I had to
have
reset
too many
it so
rules.
it eases back to a happier expression.
Today is not the day to find out why I have so many.
Yeah, I think this is working better now. I don't know. I still feel like this camera motion is a big motion. What was your reasoning behind wanting to do such a big pan around again?
There wasn't much of one, but
Yeah.
I could have two gradual zoom ins and a camera cut.
I think
But I was just trying to play with cameras.
yeah, I think if you're gonna do it, I kind of like it from here on, because then it feels like we're getting pretty close. I mean, I could see wanting to do it from here just for this just for this establishing shot of him being tied up, right? But really, I think the tension comes from this slow push in here as she gets closer. You're getting close, we're getting closer to them, and she's progressively shortening this distance. And then when he disappears and moves away, he he extended that distance. It was kind of the sort of this virtual way of him pushing her away, right? And so he starts from further away in this shot, and then he's in control of that distance. You know, he's here.
And currently, I'm going to have him move closer, and I'm hopefully gonna have him end by like touching her chin.
Yeah. So I think that helps. Like, it's like basically I think I mentioned this for somebody in the past. I don't remember if it was in this class or if it was in the other section. The winning the shot, was that with you?
Yes.
Yeah. She, like, that was a great twist there, right? You go from her winning the shot to him winning the shot because of some sort of surprise about a power he has. I will say the audio, at least in here, is really hard to hear. I don't know if that's in Maya or whatever, but in Premiere you may have to throw a couple of volume boosts on there or something like that, or maybe go look at where you captured it and make sure you were capturing it at full volume before.
I'll be able to turn it up easily. Okay. Right now I just threw it on there to have it. And something else worth mentioning that I watched before class, throwing transitions with more than one character or focus, which is what I'm going to try to do with her last pose. Is she's backing away after he points to her first.
Yeah. Is
throw her shoulder back forward to show that she's going to meet him and throw focus back to him for the reach out.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think it's coming along. I think you made like some big strides on it. So just keep hammering on it. I think this shot here works if he's way over here on this side of the screen. He needs to start like over here and then slowly shorten this distance. By the end of it, she's feeling like she's kind of hugging the edge of the screen maybe a little too much, and I maybe would, and this may be what you were just saying, like maybe push her this way just a little bit more, and the way you move the camera in, that way they're both kind of filling up this space right here.
I plan on having the cameras change a little bit more after I get him blocked and start in betweening, so I can have a better frame of reference.
Yeah.
I don't know how much space he's going to be taking up just yet.
Yeah, this is looking cool. Good job. Awesome. Let's see, Jeremy, you in here? Let's see, I need to extend my things so I can see them a little bit better. Yeah, Jeremy's here. Mine has some supreme wonk in the middle, but that's what I have questions about. One, is there a way I can freeze control a foot and slide to a different frame and keep that placed in the same spot, trying to keep the feet in the exact place on the curb? Yes, but that concerns me because they should automatically be doing that unless you're moving the placement control. So maybe not automatically, but like, have you, where did it go? Have you, you know, like the character has that big control that's around the feet. Are you moving that at all? Or is that just, you're just leaving that? Okay, cool. Then I think I understand how you're getting what you're saying. So let me show you really quick in Maya. Clear. So like earlier, you know, we made this animation, and let's say what you wanted was you wanted it to stay on the ground until frame 10 and then pop up to here on frame, well, here, let's fix that. Like you're wanting it to stay from on the ground from here to frame 15, right? Or frame, let's do it frame 20. What you can do is like if I just regular click and scrub on my timeline, the viewport updates, right? If I middle click and scrub on my timeline, it doesn't. Now, if I release it and start moving again, it'll just snap to where it is on that frame. But what I can do is go to frame 1 and middle click out to frame 20, right? And because it hasn't updated in my viewport, its value is still where it started, right? And so all I have to do is hit S, and it kind of steals the values from that keyframe, right? And so now what we get is, oh, that's funny. Did I, the reason it did that, though, I'll show you this. That was my bad. In the graph editor, I don't have those keys set to auto. And so what that means is it'll stay perfectly flat for that frame and then start to move, right? Yeah, it's a neat little trick. The other thing you can do is, and this is what some people do instead, you can right click on that, hit copy, go out there, hit paste, and it just saves that, like extends that keyframe again. You gotta be careful because what some people will try is Control C and then Control V. And if you do that, what you realize I did is I just copy and pasted my box. And so now I have 2 in the scene that both have the keyframes on them. And so you gotta be careful with like that kind of copy paste. You can make that work in the graph editor, but it doesn't generally work on the timeline. So yeah, back to the animation here. That's kind of what you're saying about getting like some of that foot sliding and stuff right through there, I'm assuming. Yeah, it can be a little bit of a pain. The other thing is that, see if it kept it here. When I was talking last class period about the Tween Machine, right? Probably did not keep it in here, but I'll load it in there again. File, open script. Was it here? Where did I put mine? Oh, cancel. Let me see if I can figure out where I put the Tween Machine. No. Is it in my downloads? I didn't download it. Let me grab it really quick. The Tween Machine will do that too, though. You just do 100% of the previous pose. I can find that really quickly. If you go to Content, Resources, and it's these resource files from Greg. Tween Machine. Yeah, download that here. Show in folder. Extract to Tween Machine. So I could go in here to Maya. Why are you not minimizing? Oh, am I doing it? File. What's happening, Maya? Huh. I don't know why it's not. Oh, there it goes. Maya was not happy. Oh, because I tried to open a OneDrive zip file, whatever that is. Delete current tab. Yes. Do not know what that is. That was my bad. Hey, Sandra, you're all right. I'm recording too. There we go. Let's create a new mail tab here, but I don't really need it. If I go to File, Open Script, and then, that was the problem, is apparently I tried to open a zip file, and Maya was like, sure, I'll do my best. Anyway, I can open up this Python script here, Control A, make me a button for that, right? And what we're getting there with this is the ability to sort of create this breakdown right here on frame 20, and I can choose to be like halfway in between the previous and the next keyframe, or I can choose to be 100% the previous keyframe, so it just stays there completely, or 100% the next keyframe, which means it gets there and holds it there before moving to the next, right? So the Tween Machine is also another quick way that you can sort of still those keyframes. So so watching this, to me, the big things I'm kind of noticing is the it feels like the controller that is around the character's hips, right? Let's stop it so we can watch it. The controller that is around the character's hips, which is like right around here. And if you rotate that, it's like the character's whole body. You can sort of, wobble back and forth, or twist all the way around. It feels like most of what's going on in the character's torso is happening because of keyframes on that control, and that other spine controls are not being affected as much, right? Like this one doesn't feel like it's doing as much. You're getting some sort of strange like pelvic bend here or something like that. So there may be another control that allows you to kind of rock the hips back and forth. But really the character, it's like their spine, the line of action on the spine really kind of stays somewhat straight throughout most of this. And I think that like right here, as they're shifting here, I would expect, like you would kind of, rock your upper body a little bit, right? And maybe as they're losing their balance right here, and this hip goes down, this shoulder would go that way, right? And you would end up with this arc in the spine like that, right? So it feels like the spine is just not reacting to what the lower body is doing quite as much. So maybe double check your reference. The weird thing is in like realistic animation, like photorealistic or like motion capture, that isn't very exaggerated. But when you watch it on a keyframed character, it always seems underplayed. And usually that's something you kind of have to ramp up a little bit or increase. And so that's my biggest note that I'm seeing. It also feels like you're missing some keyframes like this jump and stuff. And I think that's really what you were saying earlier about getting the feet lined up. Feels like there's still a little bit more information that needs to be refined about like how the character jumps. Right now it just kind of feels like he's just sliding from standing here to over here instead of doing like a hop over there. And so I think I would work a little bit more on making sure you have all of the important information sort of nailed down with a keyframe. All right. Oh, I lost my window. Where are we at? This one. Sandra, I know you said you came a little late. If you want me to check out some stuff, we got the upload folder. You can put a file in there and let me know, and I can pull it down. So we're just going to kind of go through these relatively quickly. So Brad, I'm assuming you're wanting me to watch this one?
Yes.
The one that says watch
yeah,
me?
I accidentally did a play blast of the wrong angle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's looking cool. Phones. Okay, just making sure. So I'm noticing kind of like when the character's looking around, you're doing a little bit of this like head shake in both ways. Is that supposed to be like he's looking around and like eye darting back and forth?
Yeah, more of that. I know you kind of suggested doing more kind of reference, and I shot some more and tried to make it look like his head was leading the action.
Gotcha.
but it kind of turned out a little funny, and I didn't exactly have time to fix it, and I don't know what to do to make it read better.
Yeah. I think the little head wobbles are feeling strange to me at each turn. The rest of it's feeling pretty good though. Like right here, like the way he does that, where he leads with his head and then that pulls his body over. I think that's totally improving what I was talking about last time with the head leading. You know, once the head gets there, if you wanted to do like these really slight, like, I don't know if you can see my camera, like these little slight, like, darts around, you could, but right now it's reading more like a shake, like he's like dizzy and trying to shake it off or something. Then it's reading as like these like quick focus shifts. So I think I would probably take that out for right now, and if you're wanting to add that in later, I can show you kind of like the quick way of doing it. And really what's happening there is that it's never stopping moving. If you looked at a like your graph for that, right? The character's head wobbling back and forth is just going to look like well, let's try that again. It's just going to look like, you know, like this wavy curve doing this across through there, right? And really what a dart looks like is more like flat, quick transition, flat, quick transition, flat, right? And it's because you're kind of shifting and then pausing and then shifting and then pausing. So you could try, like, I don't think I would have quite as many head wobbles in there, head shakes in there, but you could try having like 2 or something for like a quick like eye dart. And that is how your eyes dart, but since your character doesn't have eyes, it's kind of like they're doing these little head darts to show that. And otherwise, this is reading pretty good to me. I like this last little look he does. Like, I like from here to here, right? And I think the reason for that is because you have this pose, you see this quick transition, and then he hits this pose, and for the most part, holds it long enough for us to read it, right? Some of this stuff happening in here, it's like he's just constantly moving, and there's not really a chance for those poses to read as much, right? So like, that's where you would need like a moving hold. So I think that like this spot right here is a good example of it. It's like he hits that pose and then just immediately does like something else there at the end, right? And I would almost take some of that out, like this, like let him hit that pose and then let that kind of like settle to there and just let us read that pose a little longer. And then like kind of clearing some of that stuff out and then just transitioning quickly to this pose, right? And so there's like kind of 2 common errors that people make or issues that people have. One is that they're not moving their characters enough. Like we're seeing like people where the spine's feeling a little stiff. And then there's, or like the character hits a pose and they like completely copy that pose and the character like freezes for a few frames and doesn't move at all. And then the other version, or the other issue is sort of the other end of the spectrum where the character never stops moving. Like it's always kind of like shifting around somewhere. And it starts to feel a little like noisy. Like you never get that punctuation or that emphasis for the strong pose, right? And like right here, I think what I would do is like kind of simplify just a little bit of this, like he lands and sort of settles into this, and then like a quick transition into this pose, right? And then kind of lets this read for a little bit, quick transition to this pose, let it read. This pose to me is sort of the weaker link of the poses, of the look around poses. But then this one feels really good. So like this one, maybe work on it just a little bit more. And I think it's because he seems lost, right? If you look at the line of action, it's like this hand feels like he's like maybe he's like wearing a blindfold and he's like reaching around for something. But this like curve back like this, it's a cool curve in the spine, but it doesn't feel very directional. And I think if you just sort of leaned the character forward a little bit more, and that pose were a little more like this, right? And then the head was there, and this arm was out like this. You know, you may have to extend that leg just a little bit more to keep that weight balanced and stuff. I feel like that would, I don't know if you can read that very well. I feel like that would lead our line of action to feeling like he's looking more in this direction. Does it make sense? And right now it feels kind of more cautious, like something up here is falling on him, right? Which, if that's the way you wanted to go, like you just have to sell that a little bit better. Of like it's not inquisitive, it's like guarded, right? It feels like he's being attacked. But I think like kind of clear up those quick transitions and let him hit those poses harder. Maybe not harder, but like clearer. And then the rest of it's reading really good to me. Like I like the jump. There's a little bit of a weird shift right there, of what the hips are doing and the torso's doing. Like really, I think the hips are just they're a little too stuck in space there. So you know you'll get that in the cleanup pass. Like the jumps are feeling cool. You know, you're always gonna find small stuff like that ankle breaking right there. So like probably what you'd do is like, you know, bring the ankle out a little bit more and then roll the toe, like bend the toe forward. But yeah, otherwise I think this is, I love the way he comes in and lands, and I love the way he jumps out. I think you're getting some cool stuff there. In fact, right here you may be even able to lean the torso back just a little bit more. So you get more of like this, sort of this line of action. Is that making sense?
Yeah, that's a lot of good information.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of small stuff, but it should be in the video. Hopefully that's recording. It says it's recording. I'm going to trust it. That's where I always get burned. Yeah, it's looking good. Emily, you got a preference on which one you wanna?
Do the first one.
This one?
The second one had a lot of problems.
Oh, cool. Yeah, this is looking pretty good. I think there's a couple of things I think you could push a little bit that would help. One is like, I like what you're doing with your arms here. I think as the character pushes up here, curl her chest forward just a little bit, like this this mass right here, sort of leaning that forward this way just a little bit more will get you two things. It'll get you a sort of a little bit more of a curve in the spine, which feels cool. But it also feels like she's putting her weight out over that foot right there a little bit more, which would allow her to push herself up, like because her weight is more evenly distributed, or better distributed over the thing that is pushing against the ground, right? Like to make that transition, she has to shift her weight onto that front foot. And then I think the other thing is, as she's stepping down over here later, I like what you're kind of doing here, but like right through here, it feels like this part right here feels weird, right? And I think it's because she just kind of throws her weight out here over nothing, and this foot hasn't really made contact yet. So check your reference and see if there isn't a point where your character is kind of like reaching with this foot and like the toe is touching, and then the spine would kind of be leaning back this way a little bit more, right? And that's because you're still trying to keep your weight over this foot while you're getting this foot placed to catch yourself. Does that make sense? Yeah, check your reference and see if there's not a breakdown pose you could put right in there. I think that would help make that clearer. Yeah, otherwise I think this is actually looking pretty good. Her arms are kind of we call it twinning, like where they're doing kind of the exact same thing on both sides. And it's not exactly the same, but any variety you can add to that would help. Like for example, like the thing that I thought of is like, as she's coming down here, maybe one of her arms could, instead of being sort of palm down, curving this way, like you could do the opposite with one of them, right? Like maybe this arm is more like, you know, like this or something, right? Or you could do the other one that way, like, you know, put the elbow down and like the hand is kind of up here, like in case she needs to grab onto something. You can play around with that a little bit to make them not twin all the way through. The weird thing is like, in reality, we twin all the time. Like everybody, like just watch a politician give a speech, and it's nothing but like an hour of them doing like the same hand gesture with both hands on both sides, right? But it just becomes less interesting to look at in animation and kind of allows us to add a little bit of variety in spots. So, yeah, looking cool. Okay. Is this Cesar? Caesar? I'm really kind of digging the little sideways shuffle he does a little ways into it. It feels like there's still some keyframes missing, like to explain stuff like there's that contact pose, and it goes down. Maybe not right there, but it just feels like some of this right here, like as he kind of goes up to this, like the chest and the foot and everything kind of transition together. And I think it would still be interesting to see is there another keyframe that you could put in there where we're seeing this back foot pushing off, sorry here, this back foot sort of pushing off, and then the chest is sort of dragging as it's going up. And so, I don't know, double check some reference to see if that's what you're seeing or not. But it feels like there's some breakdowns that you could put in there to clear up some of that. I think the other thing is in terms of staging, right now we're seeing a lot, where'd my annotations go? There we go. Right now we're seeing like most of the action happens like right in this window here. And then there's all this space up here where nothing's really happening and down here, which is weird in the format, I guess, because really like this is your framing right now. So I would try to see if you could get a camera position to where we see more of this, unless there's a reason to be seeing this up here, right? Like, I don't know. Like, it would make sense if like somebody was hiding up here from him while he's sneaking. But as it is right now, it just makes it feel like we're further away from the action. And I think I would almost rather see this as two camera cuts that are a little closer. They're a little more framed like, you know, like this or something like that. Or like even from over here in this direction, kind of looking back at the character. So we see him or it coming closer to us. So it can be a little bit smaller at the beginning, and then it just gets closer to us as it walks. I think you're that chest rotation up and down is feeling pretty big, but I get the impression that you're doing that because you're wanting to show the weight. And I think my first instinct was to say it's too big, but I think it's that it needs those other keyframes to explain the point where it takes on the weight, right? Like where it sinks into it. Like the breakdown key of, like we go straight from the character being all the way up to the character being all the way down, and we kind of need that point to where the foot contacts, but the character's still up, and then it goes down and settles into that foot, right? So it's like I think that what's happening is it's just feeling like this, like bouncing up and down. I don't know if y'all can see my camera or not. It's feeling like this bouncing up and down when it's, and I think that's just because some of that information is not conveyed. The second half here, to me, feels a little clearer on what's happening, especially like right through here. Like there's this contact and the lean into it, and the settle and the push up. But yeah, what are you using as your reference on this? Oh, I think you may be muted.
So I think I was looking at the Predator VODs or the Predator movie.
Okay, yeah.
And like, I think League of Legends, some of the characters like Malphite or Alistar, they're with like swaying their shoulders and they're big characters.
Yeah.
So I was using that as reference.
Yeah.
And then
it's hard to find somebody that big sometimes, but yeah, finding somebody who's somewhat big, you'll at least get some of that information. So.
I was trying to make his like body like swaying for that weight. Because I see like Malphite doing his shoulders first.
Yeah.
Because his chest is like puffed up first, or Alistar.
Gotcha. Cool. And actually, I just realized, am I pronouncing your name right? Do you go by Caesar or Cesar?
It's wherever you want it to be.
Okay, cool.
Well, you can call me Cesar or Caesar. It doesn't really matter to me.
Cool. Just wanted to make sure about that. I know I've had you in class before, but I just couldn't remember particularly on pronunciation. So, if I ever pronounce anybody's name wrong or anything like that, or call you by a name you don't want to go by or whatever, let me know, and I'll do my best to work that into my very short memory. So. Yeah, it's looking good. NBH. Oh, fight. Who is this one? Oh, this is Nathan. Yeah.
I'm realizing why you said the fight scene might be a 2-project one.
Yeah.
The weight distribution is a lot different than I'm used to.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where I'm at currently.
Is this a camera motion here? Like that the camera sort of swings around?
Yeah, but it's right now there just to show, because I am not certain where I want the camera.
Yeah.
Except for that first bit, I like the up close for the finger poke.
Yeah. So I think like it may help to think in terms of like a scene for this, like. Even if you're just putting some blocks in here so we can see them, whenever you move your camera and your character is moving at the same time, sometimes it's hard to tell, like, did the character turn or did we as a viewer move, right? If there's not some environmental reference points for us to track for that, right?
Okay.
And I think this kind of scene really, like, sort of gives you some opportunities for stuff like that. To be like, are they in an alley? Are they like at a movie theater? Also, Boney seems like a jerk. I mean, yeah, sure, she was poking him in the nose, but come on, dude. Like, does he fly away at the end?
Well, so I haven't done the scene building as you said. So I need to finish that because I didn't also include the bit where he drops down from an area, so he's going to be jumping back into where he was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just haven't gotten to the scene building bit yet. I was more focused on trying to get some blocking on the fight bit.
Okay. I mean, I think this, like, scope-wise is big enough too. If you wanted to go with that.
Oh, it's not much more. It's mostly just him jumping down. This is most of it.
Boney feels less refined in terms of his animation. Like his like, she's like got these like pretty dramatic pose changes. He like kind of mainly feels like it's his arm and his leg kind of swinging. Like he's not getting his whole body into those. and I don't know where you're going with it exactly with the story, but like the thing that struck me that would be kind of a funny interpretation of it, and feel free to take this and run with it, or completely ignore it, is the idea if he was a statue, and with like a sign in the background that says like "Do not touch the artwork," and then she's touching the artwork, and so it kicks her butt and runs away. Like,
see,
I think that could be kind of funny, but do it.
I agree, that would be kind of funny. That's not where I was going, but
Okay.
maybe it
Well,
might
if
happen now.
you're welcome to it if you want to. Free ideas, throwing them away or throwing them out. Yeah, her posing's looking really good though. I think push his posing to where it's just as strong. Because right now it's like his arms are on top of each other, and like, and hers may also just be reading a little bit clearer because she's got these really nice color shapes that break out to make her silhouette stronger too. So
It also might be the posing because I worked harder on hers because she has the facial expressions as well.
yeah.
But I wanted hers to read very well.
Well, that may be something too. Like, do you want to put another character in there that is a little bit more less of a mannequin than Boney? But that's kind of up to you. Yeah, cool. All right, Sandra. Oh, Sandra already had her piece up there. Yeah. This is looking cool. I like the little jump at the end. I feel like it needs a. Is this a similar timing to your reference, Sandra?
I haven't figured out the timing completely yet, so probably not.
Okay.
But I'm working on that.
Like, to me, it's it's kind of like a persistent timing. It's like the character doesn't really slow down through the whole process. And I think I would consider like putting a little bit of a hesitation at the top of that step. I think you kind of have it there a little bit in the posing, but the fact that the character's left foot, right, gets to the top here, and just as soon as it goes down, it comes back up, right? And then they do this jump. And I think like what I think would be kind of neat is get up here to the top, get that foot down, and then do a very subtle weight shift where it's like this. Let me get it up here so you can see it. This foot here just takes a really small shuffle forward, right? It's like after you get to the top of that, you kind of got to get your balance before you make this big jump, right? Because I don't know why, but we have this habit of always alternating feet. Not always, but most often alternating feet. And so you'll like, if you take a step with your left foot, it's like the next step you want to take is with your right foot. And so I think that the fact that both of these steps forward are with the character's left foot, if you have that little bitty shuffle on the next one, then it makes sense that the left foot is what they're jumping across with. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
And I think what that'll also do is it'll give you a little bit of break in the timing there to like hesitate before you take that big jump. I think the big jump's looking pretty good. The hands are feeling a little stiff still yet. I'm assuming like that's just you're going to sort of polish those in. Getting those dynamic hand poses really helps sometimes in what the entire character pose looks like, right? So it may even be like in this pose right here as they're going across, right? You can get the hand into that a little bit more, like maybe sticking the arm out just a little bit more this way, but maybe like the index finger is sticking out while the other fingers are kind of tucking back in, and the thumb is like breaking the silhouette. And then, you know, if this arm is kind of doing the opposite, then what we get is this entire line of action that goes all the way out through the end of the finger, right? And so sometimes it helps to go ahead and put some of those poses in there just in the process. But, yeah, I think Let me watch it one more time. I think a lot of yours and Emily's are actually very similar in terms of like what the characters are doing. And so I think, again, like what I was kind of telling Emily is like, you know, this step up onto here, the character's really going to make some effort right through here to sort of push their weight over top of this foot. So maybe they'll like, you know, curl. Well, that was terrible. They may like curl forward even more here. That way that chest mass is over this front foot a little bit more. And so they can push with that foot to drive the weight up, right? And so like this pose here, you maybe could exaggerate a little bit more. Yeah, but overall, I think this is looking pretty good. Keep in mind like how your arms affect the silhouette, right? Usually, like I try to keep a little bit, you know, unless the character's arms are perfectly straight, like if you have the character's arm bending, right, and let's say that's the elbow point right there, if it's bending straight toward the camera, you still just kind of get this straight line, right? So if you can get it, if you can sort of angle the elbow a little bit to make either this or this, not exactly that, you know, like bend in one of those directions, it usually is more appealing to the camera. So right now, even though that, like the elbow's bent a little bit, if you sort of nudge the elbow out a little bit and get like something like that, and then nudge this elbow in a little bit and get something like that, it'll be just a little more interesting, or vice versa. Maybe this one goes out like this or something. But just getting that little break in it really kind of helps. Sorry, Hayden said, uploaded my progress to OneDrive a few minutes ago in case you want to grab that. Cool, thank you. I will. All right. Yeah, it's looking good. Just keep hammering on it. Okay. Let's see. I'll go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and do Glenn's and then these last two, Hayden, and then I'll pull that down in case somebody else has some more up there too. Yeah. Glenn, this is yeah, I'm digging these changes you've made. In terms of the layout. Yeah. So a couple of things. So I feel like there are two spots where the whole character kind of pops suddenly, like from here up to here, like that hip shift is like, it's like completely still and then it pops, right?
Right.
And I think that's just something you'll probably work out a little bit more in the graph editor. But I think what you're seeing in here is the reason it feels weird is there's not really an anticipation to that pop. It's just like it's kind of leaning forward and then he pops up, right? But if you look in your reference, it's really subtle, but you have a little bit of an anticipation down on that jump up, right? Your hips just very faintly dip down before they pop up. Right?
Okay.
And so like those are the little things that, like, you know, may not need a whole new pose for it, but I think just having like right through here sort of anticipating down will help that pop up feel more like a jump up, right?
Okay.
And then it feels like another little pop right across through here, right?
Yeah.
All that's ease in and ease out. Like if once you get into your graph editor, what you'll see is like those curves are, you know, it's like you set 2 keyframes and then it transitions quickly to this, right? And it's just like, you know, you got that keyframe there, you know, you got these keyframes, and it's just how you like adjust this curve or this key to make that a little bit more of it eases out and then goes into it. Or vice versa, it can kind of anticipate back before it goes into it, right?
Yeah. I was trying to play with the timing slider, and I had some successes and some failures. I'm not quite comfortable with it yet.
Yeah. With the retiming tool, or?
Yeah, with the retiming tool.
Yeah, make sure to snap afterwards, but yeah, it can be.
Okay. Oh, that could be part of it too.
Yeah, so I'll show you really quick here. I have my graph editor here. Panels. Graph editor. Oh, sorry. Did this wrong. Layout. 2 panes side by side. Sure, this works. So I got this animation here. Oh, this is a handy little trick. I'll show you all this now. If you, like right now, if I'm selecting over here in the graph editor and I scrub my timeline, like sometimes, well, it's doing it now, but let's say I had 2 windows open. Sometimes you only see one window update, so you have to click into the other one. If you go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, and I think it's under Time Slider. I think Catherine actually put this in I'm sorry, not Catherine, Talon put this in the one of the Discords earlier too. You can go down here and say Update View and set that to all, and it will always update all of the views at the same time. But for the retiming tool, you want to make sure everything's selected. Click in here. I can double click, right? I can move stuff around. I can retime stuff. Certain rigs, this will go really slow. But then when I go back to W to start moving stuff around again, recognize that some of these keyframes, like that keyframe right there, isn't quite on 60 and it isn't quite on 61, right? If I select it, you'll see that it's on 61.09. And to fix that, I highlight everything and right click and say snap. I do think there is a auto snap keys feature in here now.
Oh.
I've not tried that. I don't know how successful that'll work. And I don't know if it works with the time slider either, but I think it works on the timeline. Like if you're doing this, I think it will auto snap them when you're done.
That's a help.
Yeah, I don't know why it's taken them like 500 versions of Maya to put that in, but you know, whatever.
Another question about Maya. I come from a technical theater background, and computer lighting boards have a function where you can track a change through multiple already established cues, or for the sake of this argument, it would be keyframes.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing where I can make a change in, I have my hands doing something weird from frame 1.
Yeah.
And it's happening in every frame. And I want to change that in frame 4, but I want it to track through the rest of the animation. Is there a way to do that?
Oh, so like, let me see if I understand this. Like you're wanting to change this pose here, but you want it to affect everything?
I want it to affect all of the keyframes from that point on.
Okay, so like if you wanted like it not to land there, you wanted that if I raised this up, it would land more like here or something. Like by adjusting this, it would adjust the entire thing after that? Is that what you're saying?
No, just that aspect. So I wanted, instead of it landing,
yeah,
I wanted it to stay there, but in keyframes past the next one, it goes up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, and I want to make it all steady.
Oh, you want to make them all the same?
Yeah.
Sort of like blend all of the keyframes after this one to this one?
Yes.
There are plugins I use that can do that.
Okay.
But I don't know if there's anything directly in Maya.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and make a few changes here to sort of show you how I would fix that though if it were me, which is one of the reasons the graph editor is just so nice, right? A couple of things you could do is like, I think this is what you're saying is like, you basically want like, you made a change here, and what you're wanting is the rest of these to now line up with that.
Yes.
Okay, so a couple ways you could do that. like really if it's just on this one channel, like probably what I would end up doing is like just quickly delete that, copy the value from that and paste it into that.
Okay.
And now that's flat. But I guess what you also could have done is grab that and say that's that value. I can select all of these keys and just paste that value into all of those.
Okay.
And it shifts it flat. Sort of a more manual or like eyeballing it way of doing that is I could select all of these keys and then click press R, like for scale, and click here. I think it's like middle mouse click there, and I could sort of scale that flat to it.
I always forget about scale in the graph editor.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I have some some tools that I use, but you have to subscribe to them, and they're kind of expensive.
I gotcha.
That will blend those keys, so you could ease in and out of that and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so,
it
is a
proportionally,
nice feature,
those would proportionally change.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so like you would still keep that wave, but it would sort of scale in and out of that. Like there's just a lot of different things you could do with that. It's called Animbot is the name of the plugins, but it's a good question though. Like if you wanted it to stay the same, like I wanted to make this change and then now it's like everything is in relation to that. That's a little harder. Like if by moving this keyframe up, I wanted it to also move all of these keyframes up, really, or down. Really, the easiest way would just be to do that in the graph editor with all of them selected.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of little tricks to it like that, but I don't think there's anything by default that does what you were saying.
Okay, that's cool. I'm sorry to go off on a tangent.
Oh no, it's cool. I think that's a really neat way that like some of this is beneficial, is that people can ask those questions, and other people may either have that question or build off of that question, or it may have not even been something to occur to them, but they still learn something new. Last little thing I would say on yours, I love the arm stuff that's happening in your reference. Like I love the way you do like your arm swing right here. And I really hope you kind of get that into this jump. Like you do this, like you pull your arms back, you swing them up and do this like full circle with them. And then they kind of overshoot here on the landing.
I'll tell you, I was fighting against twinning.
Yeah.
I really was fighting against twinning in my animation.
No, I think it's cool. I think it's really more about the arc, and I think it's all right if you wanted to fight against twinning, like to get like this pose instead of like the perfect pose or perfect V pose or whatever.
Right.
But still, just that arc and the overlapping action that happens because of it, I think is.
Yeah,
really nice.
I didn't do as many in betweens as I needed to.
Yeah.
I'm realizing.
Yeah, sometimes just breaking that down a little bit more. Sometimes, like for some people, they would rather do some of that in the graph editor. But I do think like some of the like push off here, squish into this, the anticipation down and the push off, maybe a little bit more key posing on it would help as you move forward into that.
Okay.
And probably the same. Well, like for me, like if the arc on the hips and everything were perfect on this, I wouldn't key everything. I would just end up going in and manually keying the arms by themselves doing that. But that's just how I work. Other people like, you may want to break the entire thing down. Definitely think that your framing's working much better here. Do you have, so here's something to test on yours. If this character has these little like controls behind the back that allow like you to rotate the spine.
Oh, I will say that in this section especially, I overused them and had my mannequin in such bad positioning.
Well, that's all right. One thing I'm wondering about is if you rotate those, do the arms, do they stay kind of in this orientation, or do they like, if you were to rotate that top control, do they stay like kind of like this, or do they like completely, do they look like they stay attached to the chest?
They rotate with what's going on, what changes I make. So they would stay kind of in that position.
Okay. Let me
I'm
see.
trying.
Let me see if I have the bony rig in here. There may be a change you can make to the bony rig that may make future parts of this animation a little easier.
Okay. I know that that I can go IK to FK.
Yeah.
But that was the only hidden thing that for me that I had found. IK to FK on the arms and for the feet.
Yeah.
Or,
So we got that, and then we got this. So if you, yeah. So I will say this will mess up your arm animation, but it may make it easier to clean up the arm animation later.
okay.
If you select the shoulder control and this shoulder orient, if you set that to 0, like look at the difference of what happens when you rotate your spine. It stays in the orientation of your, that it's always been in. It just sort of stays locked to the thing here, right? And so the reason that's helpful is because like when you're polishing your animation, these really subtle changes you make to the spine, like see how much movement you get on the tips of the fingers of this control versus this one, and it allows you to kind of control your arcs a little bit more.
So it won't be bouncing everywhere.
Right. And so like right now you're going to feel like that arm is like locked to whatever the spine does. But if you had it set like that, you're able to kind of manually make it look like you're getting some drag and some overlapping action a little easier.
Okay.
So it may be worth going back and setting all of that to that. But once you do that, like if I'm in this pose and I go in here and set this to shoulder orient and set that to 0, the arm moves. So it's going to kind of mess up your arm animation.
Gotcha.
But then you could go through and it's really just on that shoulder. You could go through here and repose that shoulder.
Reposition it.
And it'll probably make polishing it a little easier for you. So.
Okay. Is there a similar thing on the head? I'm going to check to see if there's one on the head too.
I think there is one on the head, and yeah, head orient.
Yep.
That's one of the things I always check on any of my characters, and I don't remember if I've said that before in this. There's so many little things to mention. That's one of the things I often check on the characters because it just makes animating them a little easier. And those end steps to get like the overlapping action on the head and the arms, it's easier to make them feel disconnected, and so that's
okay.
Not everybody likes it, but it's something that I like. Oh, I didn't necessarily mean to drag it like that. Okay, yeah, so that's next. Say Leilani, is this you next? I think.
Yep.
Yeah, let me watch that one more time. Oh, that's interesting. So I was noticing something in the animation, and I was trying to figure out why it was happening, and so I wanted to watch the reference to see it. And it's like, you reach for this, and you bring this back foot up, but then as you're coming back down, the foot goes up even higher, right, before it comes back down. And I think that there is somewhere in between here and the end that your foot should probably get down a little faster. But I was like, why is she pulling the foot up that high? And I think I see why. I think it's like right in here, right? It feels like in the reference, you've almost gone off balance, right? Like you've leaned just a little bit too far in this direction. And I think that this foot that you pull up in the end is to counter for that like really slight overshoot of balance to bring you back in balance, right? So does that make sense? So I think I would do that in the pose too. Like in here, I would have the character's hips go just almost too far there. Not too much more than this, but just slightly over that foot. And that way when you pull that foot up, it's so you can, it's basically like you're trying to put more weight out. Sorry. You're trying to put more weight out here to pull your body back over this direction, right? And like, this is like, to me, like the awesome part of reference is that I would never think to do that if I were just trying to pull this out of my brain. But you get that little subtlety in your animation that you can add to it just from basing it off of reference, right? And I guarantee you when you were, sorry, there's a train going by. I don't know if y'all can hear it. I guarantee you when you were shooting this reference, you probably didn't even consciously notice that happened, right? You're probably like, never even occurred to you that you slightly went off balance and you used your foot to correct for that. But
nope.
But it's totally like, that's a little like neat thing that's happening in the scene that I think it would be neat to add that back into it. I think as you're coming back here, like everything from here to the end feels like you need a little bit more, or like maybe one more breakdown key, because you sort of you do that, you stretch out in your reference, but then as you're coming back and sort of settling back in, I think that you'll notice that you get a little bit more of a curve in your spine this way. So I think you need to add that a little bit more here with this character too, like curving their spine in just a little bit. And I think that's also part of that correcting for your balance. And then also your foot is going to lead the action to get, like, you'll notice you get that foot down pretty quickly, and then you settle your weight over top of that foot, right? And so I think that that's something I would play around with that timing just a little bit more to make sure this foot's getting on the ground. And it just really feels like maybe there's like one more breakdown pose that you need there. All of this stuff here looks pretty good to me. I think I would do just a little bit of secondary action with the hand, or with the hand or the head. I'm actually going to end my screen share just so I can show you in my video a little bit better. Like right now the character is just kind of like the hand's just drifting while they're looking, and the head kind of is too.
Mm-hmm.
What you could do instead is like these little shifts back and forth as she's looking, or doing that with the head just a little bit, like these little like darts back and forth. And that's really something that I wouldn't even worry about posing in there. I would almost put that in the graph editor, or like
just like changing the angles.
Yeah.
In there.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some good stuff in there. Like I think this is an interesting piece. Like, I would maybe play with the timing just a little bit about how the head turns here. Like if you notice on your reference here, the head turns.
I don't know where you aren't screen sharing.
I'm not screen sharing. Oh no, I'm not doing. I'm just so used to always being screen sharing. Share. Let's not do the video and sound. So you'll notice in the video here, as you start to turn back, like your head goes first, and then your torso comes around, right? And you even do a little bit of a head dart there too. It's like the head goes, and then you dart over again right there, right? And in your animation, that's all kind of happening in one smooth transition. And I think what I would do is a breakdown where you're leading with your head here, and then moving into this final pose. So that feels just a little bit blendy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you. Like messing with the offset of the head moving on like a few frames before the body starts moving.
Right, yeah. Having said that, like this, I know this is it's interesting because this is a very, it's not a very action-packed piece, right? But it's still got so many little interesting elements in it that I think that this is gonna end up being a really strong piece when you're done with it. So, I mean, I don't know. There's the appeal. There's the appeal of something of like somebody flying through the air and like stabbing a dragon and like crashing through a wall of fire or whatever. Like, there's all of that, right? This is sort of the opposite end of that spectrum of where this is like about mystery and like about what's going on in the character's head, and it's got like some neat elements to it. The body mechanics is almost secondary to all of that. I think it's going to, in your portfolio, it's going to read more as a pantomime acting piece. But yeah, I think it's looking cool. It's a good piece. All right, so I know Hayden said he'd put a piece up there. Let me go find that. Is that it? No, not at all. Content. Oh, it's here. Refresh. Anybody else put anything up there they want me to pull down? Roger.
Yeah, sorry, I put mine up there.
Okay, so Rogers and Michael. Download. Is that going to download everything, or is it just going to download those two? Yeah, just download those two. Okay. Oh, does it have audio, Hayden?
Yes, this one does.
Let me go ahead and share with audio so people can hear it.
I just want a mate. I just want a mate. I just want a mate. I just want a mate.
He just wants to what?
He wants a mate.
A mate.
Yeah.
I was hearing it as a verb, not as a noun.
That's
totally changing.
In fact, that's the whole gist of this. But by the time the whole piece is done, that's the gist of the scene.
Okay.
I just want a mate.
Okay. Want a mate. Yeah, I think you're getting the. I mean, I think I would. So this is multiple shots, or is this the only shot you're on?
I don't have anything else set just yet. So I got this one set. I have another one that's going to have the second character, and then.
Oh. So the entire thing will be more than one character, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to.
What's the follow-up line?
The follow-up line is, you just want to mate.
Oh, okay, that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was not the only one hearing it that way. What is this? What is this from?
This is from Doctor Who.
Ah, okay.
I just want a mate.
So I think it's looking good. I think the animation right here, it like really just feels like it's just that one arm control changing, and so just by like we were talking about just now with Leilani's, like even by doing that, you're going to throw your character's balance a little bit. And so you would see.
Okay, so like a little bit of a shift.
Yeah, like a little bit of something will happen in the chest, like maybe the line of action would shift just a little bit on the shoulders, like maybe that would drop just a little bit more. The character's head maybe would do a little bit of something. It's just really it's really improbable that you could move your entire arm without affecting the rest of your body at all, right? And so I would just build that into the pose, even if it's a really small change. But it's also like that's the accent on the line too. Like I just want to mate. Like the mate like kind of goes up like in pitch and in volume, all of that stuff. And when we do that, we have a tendency to act with our head a little bit too. Like maybe he would even just do like a little bit of a head gesture with it.
Okay.
And you kind of, he just does it here, and like maybe it would just kind of pop up and then back down a little bit.
Gotcha.
I don't know what this is. Never mind. So Yeah. I think it's off to a good start. I would, my 2 cents, just to see if it's reading, I would block in a few poses on the face, right? Like maybe even the poses you have on the body, and like you're not gonna have to lip sync the whole thing, but like push the facial expressions on it, just to see if you're getting that. And it may even be worth doing the face stuff in a different layer, so you can blend that on and off if you wanted to. But to me, like, in a shot like this one, it's so much about, like, pretty much it's all about the character's upper torso, right, to the top of their head. Make sure you're getting that acting in on all of that, right? Like, at least maybe a couple of eyebrow poses, and if there's like if there's a cringe in there, there's like a sneer or anything like that, putting that into the face so we can see that acting starting to come out will really help us know if this is working or not, right?
Okay, gotcha.
So I think that's where I would kind of go next on it. So yeah, cool.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Anytime. Let's check out what Michael's got here. Oh yeah.
Sorry if I cut in and out. My internet's kind of bad at the moment.
Oh, no, you're fine.
So to put it in perspective of like my current progress, I have the idle, walk, and run very basically blocked. The only thing that I'm missing is the 3 hits that I'm going to be animating. And so in the next in the next week, really, I plan on finishing the idle and having the 3 attacks blocked.
Okay. So my only notes about this one, I feel like the toes are still like they're kind of pointed mostly forward in this, and I would think about like just try it to see what happens if you took this back foot and just kind of angled the toes out like this a little bit, so your toes are really, for the most part, kind of like in that orientation, and see if that helps a little bit. It's really just be like grabbing that IK control and like shifting it in the graph editor. To me, that feels more stable for somebody who's like ready to fight, and you would still get that rotation, a little bit of rotation on each of them, right? But just sort of pointing the back toe out to the side a little bit more feels like it would help. I like what you're getting here, though. That's totally like a bouncy, ready to fight, like eager pose. Now that I'm seeing it moving, like that arm being straight in the back is maybe not helping that. Like maybe get a little bit of a bend in the elbow for it. But yeah, this is looking cool.
Try, if I have the time for it, I want to try doing an animation layer for the idle for the top.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And so. And so like but that's kind of like, and so like I'm trying to figure things out on that.
Sorry, Michael. Your audio's cutting out a little bit, and then it's like playing really fast and then pausing. So I'm not sure if can you still hear us?
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay. What? My wife just sent. Now I'm just mad. My wife just sent me a message that says Disney's closing Blue Sky.
Oh.
I'm sure glad I'm documenting this on video. I'm getting ready to go off on a... that sucks. That's uncool, Disney. That's uncool.
Yep.
All right. Well, anyway, that sucks. So let's check this out. I'll have to... I think this was looking pretty good. You got a little bit of a twitch going on in the shoulder.
There's a lot of cleanup I still need to do.
It reads to me a little bit like I can't see it from this angle. I like this pose, but it reads to me a little bit like if the so I always have to like think of this from the side view a little bit. So if this is the character's spine kind of pointing forward, right?
Yeah.
It's like where the feet are hitting. So let's say the feet are hitting somewhere in this range, right? Like they're, kind of hitting like this and like pushing off here, right? That feels hesitant, right? Like that's what you would see with a sneak, right? Vice versa, or not vice versa, like, conversely, like,
okay,
if the feet are hitting further behind the character, like back here, like here, and stuff like that, then it feels like it's pushing the character forward. And I think right now it feels like her feet are hitting a little too far forward, or like her stride is happening a little too far forward. And so I would just grab those controls.
okay.
I think it's probably the Z-axis. Shift that Z-axis to where the feet are usually more behind the character. Because what that's going to lead to is a line of action that feels more like this, right? Throughout the whole thing. And it's going to feel a little bit more like she's charging forward. Like, she's like going in this direction that way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and right now it just kind of feels like, especially kind of there as an example, like right here, how far forward this front foot is, reads as like that would slow her down, not drive her forward. Right?
Okay.
I'm only seeing it in a few poses though. A lot of times your feet are back behind you, so that might be something to just look at and like, where's the stride length, and how can you clean that up? So.
Okay, so it's just adjusting the stride length with the feet.
Yeah, and using the Z translate, shifting that in the graph editor, will actually for the most part let you sort of shift that whole thing, and you can slide it down a little bit and see what it looks like further back or further forward, and you can just sort of adjust the translate. It's probably translate Z to figure that out.
Yeah. The walk I have specific questions on because I've done different iterations on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering what your thoughts would be if I had, because I don't think the current walk really blends well with the idle.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking as if maybe I have the feet cross, like she's leaning on, like she's, like her hips are tilted back and she's crossing her feet.
Right. Like a sort of like a ninja, step around it. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, kind of.
But yeah, I think
because I don't know what I could. Oh no, go ahead.
So I think you're right. I think if you were to look at this character from above, right, like you have this is like her shoulders and her head, right, and then you have one foot that's kind of back here, one foot that's kind of up here, right, and so, I think that you could. You don't have to, this doesn't have to be the middle of the stride, right? It doesn't have to be that to take this step, you have to get this foot way out here in front and then bring it back to here, right? It could be that you just have to get the foot up to here and slide it back, and it can almost be like a sidestep shuffle almost. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The other thing is you're trying to this is something you might want to consider as sort of somebody who's interested in sort of the technical side of Unreal, is that right now the reason we set up the game animations the way we do is because we let Unreal control the transition between idle to walk, right? And it's easier to not have that bad transition or that big transition, right? But not all not all games do that, right? Like what you may actually have is like a start walk, and it's like a really short animation where you just figure out what is your best character's walk pose. And you transition into that walk pose before you start the walk cycle. Does that make sense? It's like instead of playing a transition, you play a shorter animation that is a custom transition into it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You could consider if you wanted to try that, and then you wouldn't have to have her walking in such a pose similar to the idol. The other thing you could consider doing, and it may or may not work, is this is closer to the contact pose than the passing pose. And so really it's figuring out, like, I guess you're starting, yeah, that's kind of how you're starting it. You're starting it as the contact, but like, I guess really what I would think about is maybe you don't have to go that far forward on this step right here. Maybe as far forward as that front foot goes is just right in front of where this, well, I guess that is about where it's going. Yeah. But actually it doesn't bother me too bad on the walk. It does feel like maybe her right leg is making a really big step, and maybe you would make the steps a little smaller, just the stride length a little smaller. But you know, otherwise I'm not seeing anything that really like sticks out as wrong on this one. Yeah, cool. All right, y'all. I ended up taking up more time than I really meant to today. Let's go ahead and quickly power through what I wanted to look at in terms of splining, because really, for me, splining is not something that. Good job, by the way. Y'all have some really good stuff here. I'm really seeing some great progress, and I'm excited to see how this turns out. Dear Jam faculty, go to Marlowe lectures. Give me 1 second. Nope. There we go. So I wanted to quickly go through my splining process, right? So we know where we were when we left off, right? We were, let me go and kill that one really quick. Get rid of that. So you should be able to see it from sort of where we were when we stopped last time. It was like this, right? This is where you sort of make that decision going to splined, right? So I have a, I've already shown you all this, but I'll show you again where it's at. If you go to the resources, resources files from Greg under resources, there's this splining checklist. So we can open this up. Again, this is what I do. Like, it took me a long time to even write this down. This is just what I had in my head of what I did. You know, you start with your root motion, you work up the spine, work sort of down the arms, and then I sort of think about offsetting after I've got, because really what I'm doing with these first three is I'm making sure all of that motion is smooth and accurate, the timing is good. And some of that may include offsetting within the graph editor, right? This second section where I start into offsetting, this is really about changing up when things hit, when things happen, making stuff feel like it's not all happening at the same time. And adding like that looseness to the animation. And then this polish pass is all about those details that almost, like, it's almost rare to see you getting to this level of polish in student work, right? I really feel like my goal as a teacher is for this to just become the norm of what we can get to in this department. But I recognize, like, you know, time limitations, like this is that stuff that impresses animators, right? You know, your aunt isn't going to notice the difference, but another animator will notice when You have some nice offset and overlapping action on the fingers, right? So let's kind of look at me going through that process one step at a time. Here we go. So the first thing is, as we talked about before, when we set this to spline, we're going to see something really mess up on this flip, right? So I set that to auto, and watch what happens right through here. It just really messes up right there in that flip, right? So the reason that this is happening is it's not necessarily gimbal lock, but it's a gimbal issue, right? And I've probably explained this to you all before, but Maya can really misunderstand. Maya really can misunderstand sometimes how you want it to get from pose A to pose B, right? And so if, are y'all seeing? Yeah, you're seeing my screen. So if we have an object, let me switch out of sharing my screen, show you my phone here. So if I have my phone like this, right, and I want to animate it to where it's turned 180 degrees facing you now, right? Me and you know that probably the easiest way to do that is a 180 degree rotation on a single curve, right, to get that rotation. But we also have to recognize that that's not the only way that can happen, right? It could also get to that position by rotating down like this, rotating all the way around like this, and then rotating up like this, right? And we're at the same pose with a totally different configuration of those channels to get to that pose, right? And so where we get this really smooth one transition like this, if we got there using that other posing technique, we may get that rotation that looks something like this to get there, right? And that's the challenge, right? And that's really what's happened is when I was posing this, I posed it in a way that Maya just was like, I don't understand what you just did there. I'm going to take a stab at it and give you the best result I possibly can. So apparently I've started this over. But that's why we're getting this weird flip, right? Maya's doesn't understand that we're wanting it to flip all the way around, right? So what I do is I just select all of those curves and I go curve and then that Euler filter. So let me back up a little bit and watch what happens there. So you'll see that in my curve, right? That giant red jag that happens there. It's that's the rotate X that would cause our character to flip all the way around, right? And it was climbing up in value. Let's go back to where I'm just looking at that curve, right? Yeah, so you can see it there. It is climbing up in value as she flips forward, but then suddenly it just flips back again, right? It goes down and flips back. And so watch what happens when I select all the curves and I go to, in the menu, curves, Euler filter right there. It's pronounced Euler, but it looks like Euler, E-U-L-E-R. When I do that, watch what happens to that red curve. It just shifts all my curves, and now, so it shifts it now to where now my character flips 180 degrees. Now the feet and the head are still doing something weird, so I'll just run that Euler filter on those again, or on those as well. And then I'll go ahead and run it. I think I have to do it on the arms and the legs. Let's see. Curves, Euler filter, yep. And I'm going to just run it on both of the legs at the same time. And so now just by doing that, my animation looks better. Now this is, I think, the key illustration of why we don't freak out and just immediately start making changes to the animation when we're blocking it in, right? We could spend hours reposing stuff and fighting over why that character is flipping the wrong way. But instead, if I just set it to stepped mode, I just think about my poses, right? Think about how to clearly show everything one pose at a time. Then when I get to the spline section of this, there's usually a way that I can quickly make those changes, right? Okay, so that fixes that. It's no longer something I even have to worry about. So I'm gonna have to leave it. That's all right. So just by doing that, this is now the animation I have in splined, right? And so it just looks way better. So again, working through that splining playlist, I'm going to open up the graph editor, grab these curves, and I'm just going to start going through here and making these changes to the curves to where I'm looking at it one channel at a time, right? So right now I'm on Translate X, and you'll see I positioned my camera over here to the Translate X view, right? Switching over to the Translate X view so I can see my side-to-side shifts and adjust those curves accordingly. Same with my up and down, my Translate Y, right? I'm just going to go through one key at a time, adjusting that to get the weight and the impact of each of these steps, right? So again, you can see like there's an animator graduated from here named David Edwards, and he works at Blizzard now. He used a great analogy. He's like, think of this curve as a roller coaster, right? And if you have this really sharp change, like the people riding that roller coaster, it's going to feel very jolting to them, right? Like if it's a sudden like drop and then it just flattens out, like you couldn't have that in real life because it would kill someone, like to have that drop and then suddenly it goes flat. And that's why we feel those hard jolts. And so sometimes like we're thinking of this value change as this roller coaster, and the only time you want that to, like you make those changes when you want that impact to happen, but otherwise you're adjusting these curves to make this motion feel like it's flowing correctly. And so you also notice that periodically I'm play blasting, because even though Maya is going to play it back the best it can, sometimes it'll skip a frame, sometimes there's still little things that are messing up. And so I went through all my translates, now I'm onto my rotates, right? And I recognize that when I start adjusting my rotates, I'm getting really subtle changes that are going to affect the entire pose. That's all right. I can always go back and sort of tweak that pose as I go through the curves, right? So rotate forward. And so you can see I'm kind of adjusting little things, adding some extra keys for overlapping action, from settling, right? And again, like we talked in previous classes about that feeling of like you're not getting positive feedback from it. Like you're making all of these changes and it takes a while before you start to notice the difference. And this is that area for me that like can be very difficult. So play blast often, check out the differences and see how much it's improved. But you're seeing these really subtle changes that I'm making in this, right? To make this motion happen. It rotates. Again, this is like to add a little bit of drag on each of those steps, right? And you can see that as I'm doing it, I'm also like using it to clean up the pose just a little bit to make the pose read more clearly in every frame. Continuing to that. So, yeah. So this is me again breaking out the graph or the editable motion trail just so I can kind of see my arcs on that. And I think this is where I got a phone call. There we go, I'm back. Following on my rotate Z. And you can see that there are little things in there that were big changes I just made. Like that little thing that happened there. I don't know what happened when I was posing, but for whatever reason, there's a big jagged change in that curve that I had done when I was posing, and I just decided that wasn't helping my animation to have that. I'll take that out and try to make that happen more smoothly, right? All right. And again, I always add just a little bit. So this is something I do in between that. Like once I get the hips, my translates, my rotates done on my hips, I go back and then I start looking at the feet and how the feet interact with that, right? So we'll actually look at that in the next pose here, or in the next section here. So I want to talk about that. Like what I just did was only editing the curves on the hips for the translates and the rotates, right? And if you look at my clock on there, that was 10:30 when I finished. I started at 8:45, right? So that was almost 2 hours of me editing the curves on the root of this character. Keep in mind, I blocked the whole thing in 5 hours, right? Like that's 2 hours of just editing that curve. I think this is the part that people underestimate the amount of time animators put into this, right? This refinement really makes a huge difference in the way this works out. So let's move on. So the next step from there, after I've gotten those hips looking right, I really want to do a pass on the feet just to make sure that they are reacting and causing the weight to feel correct, right? Like as we're sinking in there. And so you'll notice some of what I'm doing is actually setting more keyframes. I know I'm in the splining pass, but sometimes I just need more information defined. And so like earlier, Glenn, when we were talking about like, you know, how you might look at your arms, this is just like, maybe I need more information in there, but I just need it on the arms, or I just need it on the legs, right? And so this is me really refining what my legs are doing in order to get a better performance throughout this thing. But more importantly, like now that the hips are polished, it's more accurate to the weight, right? For those hips to move at all, they have to be pushing against the ground, contacting the ground, adjusting stuff. And you'll notice that with my feet, I'm not doing a ton of stuff in the graph editor. I'm doing a little bit, but for the, you know, it's not as like polish heavy in the graph editor, because a lot of times the feet are just locked to the ground, right? It's really polishing those moments when they're up in the air. And so you'll see there, like the way her foot is traveling through the air and just making those transitions feel better, right? Right here, locking her foot to the ground just a little longer, so it feels like she's pushing off. Yeah, so lots of little things that I'm doing on the feet just to make sure that the weight feels good. We get this like cascading landing on the ground there. You'll even notice I'm doing stuff like bending the toes back to make them look like they're dragging. All right. There we go, and then this little pushback that she does there. Adjusting that. All right, so again, looking at the time in this, we're wrapping this up at about 11:07 a.m. I started this at, 10:56, so that wasn't very much time that I spent on the feet. It was really just to make sure that now that I've made those changes to the hips or to the root, that this feels believable. This feels like the physics is actually there, right? Okay, spine and the head. So from here, I do work up the spine controls, and I just look at the translates and rotates for each of them. Now, in this case, it's an IK spine. I did have a little bit of translate work on it, but it's mostly rotate work, like mostly rotation that I've done on this. And so I'm just going to kind of go through here and look at those curves and make sure that they're doing what I need them to do. And I'm doing this in regards to what the spine is doing, right? Or what the root control is doing, right? If the root control moves and I want it to feel like the spine is reacting to that, then this is where I get a little bit of that control to do that. I can drag it a little bit behind. I can have a little bit of overshoot, stuff like that. So I'm going through it one curve at a time and making sure I'm really getting that fine detail into the spine, right? Get that. So you can see I can add the overshoot on the spine there when she hits to make it have a little bit of overlapping action, right? There's a weird turn right here too. I deal with eventually. The way she like has a wobble right there. She's turning. There you go. And so now I'm going to the head. Right? Is that sort of that as I worked my way up my spine controls? Sort of the head is the last element of the end of the spine there. So it's all kind of connected and reacts together. And you'll see that there are times I'm actually just changing the keyframes, right? I'm actually just posing it differently. Because I've made some changes and now that's actually going to affect like silhouette and, you know, things like that. And so sometimes they're bigger changes than I really even want to make in the graph editor. Okay, and so all the way down to that. And so again, like looking at the time, 11:17 through all of that, I did all of that work on the head and spine in like less than 10 minutes, right? So when I tell you like you're touching all of the curves, like it's not like you're, you know, I spent a lot of time on that root control to make sure it was working correctly. But what that did is it made the pathway clearer, right? And so now I'm able to polish the spine much faster, right? At this point, this was where I was, right? I actually took the day from there and like kind of looked at it. So this is what the animation looked like at that point. So looking better. In all honesty, that run-in has some issues, right? And so a couple days later, I went through, did a little more splining on this. So there were some other small issues. I'm trying to remember what they were. Yeah, like right through here, I felt like one of my issues was the way the run felt like it kind of slowed down in the middle. So I had to go back and make some pretty major changes to the animation by shifting stuff in the graph editor, and that messed up some of my curves. So I had to go back and kind of fix some of those. And I think what I did is I ended up adding an additional step, or like making the way, like the pacing of how she came in there a little different, because it kind of felt like she was losing energy, and I really wanted it to look like she was just plowing into it, right? And so those were some major changes I had to fix, but that was something that I wanted to check, right? Okay. Let's say again, this is that little thing I was talking about, like the little wobble in her hips. Like, it was just being problematic. And I honestly did not know why. And so I just kind of had to go in there and brute force it. Like, I just kind of made it do exactly what I wanted it to do by almost setting a keyframe every frame of the animation through there, right? And so that was another one of the little problems I wanted to fix, right? So going through the graph editor didn't really fix all of that. I still had to go in and fix it in another way. So one of the 12 principles is timing, right? And we make a concerted effort to think about timing in your blocking pass, like in your blocking plus pass. But at this point, like, it's nice to just stop and say, okay, is my timing working, right? And I want to point out, like, look at my timeline right now. Like, it's just covered in little red tick marks, right? To like grab stuff and scale it on the timeline gets a little bit messy at this point, right? So that's why I'm using this retiming tool. We just kind of talked about it a few minutes ago. And what's happening here? So what I did is I went through and I used the retiming tool to start adjusting the timing, right? To little, like, basically this pass, I'm not thinking about anything except for the speed in which things are moving, right? And so you see I can speed up some stuff. I kind of give myself a little bit longer of a hesitation at the top of the tree, right? I think here I speed up the flip just a little bit, right? And so in the process of doing this, I'm making pretty big changes to a lot of keyframes, right? And in a minute here, I'm going to have to snap those back together, but I'm just using this to do a focused pass where I'm thinking about nothing but timing, right? And this is a part that I think a lot of people leave out, right? But it really does help make the animation better. What it also does, though, is it breaks some stuff, right? So in that retiming pass, like, there's a couple of little things that messed up in my hips there in terms of how the curve was flowing. And so I just went in there and made sure that was reading clearly still yet, right? So you may have to go through and touch those curves multiple times, right? It's really like that first time through is going to make some things very clear. And sometimes that means you have to change things to make it work better. It's like you're just refining and getting closer. So that wasn't very much stuff I had to fix. There were a couple of things that I noticed by doing that retiming kind of messed up in my the weight of the character, right? So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and start splining the arms. So I went down the arm controls one at a time. Again, looking at all of those curves. This pass will actually, for the most part, it will clean up your arcs on the hand just a little bit. It doesn't mean that you're completely finished with this, though. And I don't remember if I do that in this pass or not. Like, one of the last things you can do is put an arc tracker on the character's hands and make sure that is working. Oh, what's happening there? Make sure we're getting clean arcs on like the fingers and stuff like that. So you'll notice I am still doing some finger work to continue to refine those details in there. And so again, just getting that curve going through there. Yeah, really small stuff. At this point, I'm on the elbow control. Now, the elbow control, for the most part, a character's elbow only bends in one direction, so usually that's just one curve you really have to adjust. You notice I'm putting a few extra keyframes on the hand here that I felt like were needed to get a little bit extra overlapping action. There we go. And then I'm going over to the other arm, working down that arm and doing kind of the same thing again to get cleaner arcs, a cleaner motion in this as well. So I'm on the elbow now. Again, you'll notice that most of the elbow motion is only on the y-axis. Right. There we go. That's me adding a little bit of extra hand animation to get better overlapping action. And then this is me play blasting. Okay. So at this point, this is what I have with the spine, the retiming, and the spine. I'm not sure if y'all can see that. Let me share this with Optimize for video sharing again so you can see it better. Whoop. And we will repeat that. So I'm getting much closer, right? So you'll also notice a little bit, let me play that one more time. You'll also notice that the timing now is a little bit different than what was in my reference, right? And it's because the reference, again, is just guiding me on this, it's not the end all be all, it's all about the final performance. So last few sections here, I did a couple of small tweaks to the feet to make them look a little bit better in the way that they're like contacting the ground and stuff like that. Really small changes, but it's little things like how the feet slap down, like maybe a little bit of offsetting on that. You can see I play blast it to check it. So like just getting that foot to go flat a little faster and keeping the alignment a little better. This is just little things that I'm doing there. Playing around with the arc of the foot. You'll see there where I'm breaking that tangent. That's to make this like slap on the ground that the foot does feel a little bit better. So you'll see like right here where she like hits the ground and does this little hop. I want it to feel like it really sticks to the ground for that. And again, continuing to work through this curve. Really fighting with that hip thing again still. And then play blasting it out. That's what I'm getting. So the last thing I want you to notice that I haven't actually offset anything, not in an official pass. So this is the play blast right now as I have it. Again, I'm still seeing some little issues just from hindsight on it. So the next step that I go through with this is offsetting those arms and different elements of the body, right? And so this is really the last step I made it to. There's still more polish that I'd like to be able to do to this, but you'll notice I'm doing little things like offsetting parts of the body, like I'm offsetting the spine and the head during sections of it. And I usually try offsetting all of it, like I'm doing there, to see what that does. And sometimes it really breaks stuff, and then you have to just rework whole sections, make certain sections happen faster, certain sections happen slower, right, or earlier. And this is all about that lead and follow we keep talking about, right? And so this is me offsetting up the spine to see how I can get that looseness happening. And then from there, I start going down the arms, and I find areas, like, again, first thing I try is just offsetting the whole thing by a frame and seeing if what that does, and that's kind of like that pendulum trick. In this case, it really probably messes up around the knees, so I just undid that. And instead, I offset a little bit before and after the flip in order to make that line up better, right? And again, it's not always after, right? It's not always that the elbow rotates after the shoulder. Sometimes it rotates before. And so I'm really just shifting that stuff a frame or two to see the results and see if that's working better or not as good. Making some small changes there. Okay, and then so the last thing I want to show y'all, this is the final play blast I had up to that point. So let me let that loop a few times. To me, there's still a little bit of some weirdness when that step right before she goes up the tree. Like there's something weird going on the foot and the way it lands. It feels a little soft to me. And she almost has an IK pop in her knees during that little bounce at the end. So I think I would probably roll her up on the back of her feet a little bit better. And then I think the last thing I would probably do before I would kind of call this finished is I would go through and track her hands, the tip of her nose, and her feet, and make sure that those arcs are really clean, right? Make sure there's not any weird hiccups in that, right? All right. Again, as always, I went way over today from what I expected to talk. I think a lot of that was in giving feedback on the milestones. So I do kind of want to ask you some questions here on this. Is the milestone feedback helpful? Like, is that something to continue?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
I like it.
I'm appreciating it.
Okay, cool. I don't want to feel like I'm just like, I know I talk a lot, but like I could totally talk less and give you more work time, but I feel like the place that would cut out would be sort of this in-class feedback. But it feels like it doesn't feel like wasted time to me. I do recognize though that puts a little bit more of the like outside of class work on this. If you don't have like 2 monitors or you don't have like screen real estate to be able to sort of multitask during this, I know that I'm kind of eating up work time where you could ask questions and stuff. Next class period, my 2 cents, we may even, I'll give everybody the option to meet up in their mentor groups, but it doesn't have to be a major meeting because I'd say most people are probably close to where they're at right now. You know, they'll be a little bit further along, but I don't know if you have to have like a giant meeting right after that. But you should have plenty of work time next class period, and then the following class period be where we kind of check out the finals. So, any questions for me right now? Anything that's came up through this or?
Is next Tuesday the final day?
Yeah, let me share my screen here really quick. So I think. Is it? Yeah. I think this is our schedule. So today we're there. Thursday is work day, and then Tuesday is the final. And then following that, we have a break. And so again, like I just kind of remind everybody, like, get as much as you can done by this point. You all are probably aware that in all my classes, as long as you've turned something in on the due date, you can continue to revise that until we get to the final, right? And so if you haven't been in one of my classes before and seen that, let me show you really quickly. There we go. Under assignments, submissions, projects, section 001. Oh, have I not made one? Huh. Anyway, new folder. Revisions. Create. I thought I already had this one in there. So basically, after you've turned in the final, if you have revisions you want to submit, you can continue to put them in this revisions folder until the end of the semester. And that means, like, you know, yeah, it's due on, where did I lose that? It's due on, you know, on a week from today. But if you still continue to work on it over the break and you want to drop something in there on the 23rd, you're welcome to. Or if you like make a revision, like, you know, the day before, you know, finals week, you can drop it in then, right? And basically what I do is that revisions folder is a folder I keep going back to every time I do grading. And I check to see if there's anything new in there. And if there is, I look at it, I compare it to the previous one, and I update the grade. And so get it as done as you possibly can, because I'm sure you are aware that you're not going to have a whole lot of extra time in the future. Like, and that's really just kind of making future you's life a little harder. So try to get it as done as you can and not really like dump everything on the end of the semester. But that is like a little bit of a safety net, and that like you have that freedom that if you find a couple of extra hours somewhere, you can do a polish pass on it and raise your grade up a little bit, right? And so that's kind of built into all of my classes to where people can revise as many times as they want to. But yeah, for project one, it's a week from today is when we're kind of aiming at it. The other thing I would point out is that our timeline for project two is a little shorter, right? Like we had 1, 2, 3.5 weeks on this project. Next project we have 1, 2, 3 weeks. So it's just a little bit shorter, right? People repeating the class may want to sort of consider that in which project they decide to work on for project two. Right. Other questions? Or Michael, did that answer your question? Or did you have any others? No? Any other questions about anything? Anybody?
I have something that you might be able to help me with because I can't get something to work.
Okay. Yep. Is that like a one-on-one thing, or is it like a more of a generalized question? Like, is it worth? Is everybody? Should everybody in the class hang around and listen, or should I just?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't get the studio library to work.
Yeah, that thing's crazy. You're welcome. Let's see if anybody else has any like quick questions, and if not, then if people want to hang around and watch that, they can, and if not, I'll let them head out. Any other questions? Anybody? All right. Well, again, you're welcome to head out if you want to. You're welcome to hang around and watch me and Eli like fight with this studio library thing. The studio library is something that will come up in Project 4 that I think y'all may be interested in. So, all right, cool. Thanks, y'all. Do you want to share your screen?
Greg.
So.
Sure.
Okay.
Also, I broke her head.
You did.
So.
How did you do that?
I turned her global on, which was funny to watch because just have her staring at him and then watching it flip under.
Yeah. So there's a trick to how you can fix that. If you wanted to, like you could transfer that. Like there are some tools that could let you do that. But basically, if you went in there and constrained a locator to her head, and then went through and set a keyframe on every frame of it, like baked out a keyframe of all of its locations, right? Then that locator would stay in the same orientation and location as her head was. And then you can unconstrain it and then switch it to global and go in there and align the head back to that locator on the keyframes that you needed to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wasn't very far, so I was just going to go back to fixing it so I wouldn't have to worry about it as much later.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's been a while since I've done this. Let's see.
There's an install GIF of literally just unzipping it and everything and then taking this, throwing it in here. Pops up, but an error. I don't know why.
The library is not popping up either, though, is it? Let's see. Let me look this up really quick. Is there a chance it's line 239? What's line 239? Does it go that far?
The install doesn't go that far.
Oh, but it's running the other one. Okay. Okay. And you're dragging that from your Z drive, right? Is that on one of these computers, or is that a home computer?
It's on one of those computers.
Okay. Let's try going up one, and try grabbing that studio library folder. Studio 2.41. Yeah, go ahead and grab that. Copy it, I guess. And try putting it in your documents somewhere. Go to documents, and then, is there a Maya? Yeah, put it in your Maya folder. Sure. It's a good spot for it. Now try dragging that install again. Let's do a, or from the new, yeah, from the new one you made.
I was trying to save space on the
Gotcha.
thing.
Okay, hit
Different error.
Okay. Click that button again. Let's try this really quick. And then hit Alt space. And then M. And then an arrow. And now move your mouse. Anything happen? Okay.
Alt space M arrow.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not working. See if she. There's some videos on YouTube. This feels like you're doing it right to me. You know, I've had trouble with this character before too, actually. Or not this character, this what is a QT tool? Try the Python one, the one beside it.
This one?
Yeah, try that.
That's compiled Python and it won't open it. It's not recognized.
Oh, okay. Yeah, try the other
I've tried doing it.
Serious work mode, Greg.
Yeah. So we can try this. Try selecting all of that. Just like click in there and hit Control A. And then Control Enter. That's weird. Why is this not working?
Right now it says the file name is not defined.
Let me go ahead and see if it does it on mine too. Actually, we may have to. This may be something we have to work through on the office hours tomorrow too. I know we got another class coming in here. I'm gonna try to see if I can squeeze a bite in.
It's fine. I was
No,
trying to see if it was just a quick thing.
Yeah,
It was
I would have thought
more
that
the
fixed it. But
thing, because sometimes it is.
yeah, apparently not this time. I don't know why that's working. If I get a chance, I'll check it out on my computer here too, a little bit later today, and see if I can get it to work on this one. And if so, I'll send you some information about it. So.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Sorry.
It feels like technology has waited till this semester to start messing with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that pose library is nice though when you get it to work. But you also have to. It's like the first time you set it up, you have to like point it to certain folders and stuff. And so maybe there's just a better place to put it. What is this?
Well, I'm gonna go hop out to eat and let you try to eat before next class.
Sounds good.
Floods in.
Cool.
See you, Greg.
Hey, see y'all.
Hey, Greg. I have to explain myself.
Okay.
So my mouse, right? My mouse is like when I click and drag things. I'm sure that's what your "what the heck is this" was just now. My mouse, when I click and drag things, it likes to mess up and click and drag other things. So I uploaded my entire work headshots folder into the drop-off box because it like if I click and hold it, it doesn't hold all the way. I've ordered a new mouse and it's on the way. So you can just delete the Buck Sports Network folder.
Okay, let me head over there and.
I'm very sorry. I had to explain myself. It was like uploading 890 items. I'm like, please don't do that.
Yeah. I gotta find it here.
I was hoping nobody would see it, but I wanted to explain myself.
So just delete that entire folder?
Yep. The entire thing. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
Oh my god.
Is there a way to delete this here?
It wouldn't let me delete it. So I figured maybe you had to as the administrator.
Yeah, I should be able to.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. I don't even know. My mouse sucks. There's a new one on the way. It's coming.
Let me let me see if I can get into, for some reason, wait, that's not it. Submissions, O2.
It's Mercury retrograde. The technology all wants to break right now, so.
Okay. I'm getting manage access, download, and details. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Oh, let's see if that'll work. I don't know if it has me as like logged in to this, if that makes sense. Like it may be seeing me as just.
You guys can't make fun of me. I'm sure we've all been there.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Okay. It does appear that I am logged in. So let me now go to my OneDrive. What is happening? Is OneDrive on this computer? Actually, let me go ahead and stop recording.